Liam, thank you for joining us today. We got another episode of Raw and Relentless. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to meet you, talk to you, and hopefully give a good message to your guests about how problems are optional in life.
That's right. So, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, basically, I was a person who went from being a stressed millionaire success seeker to losing everything and becoming homeless, and then realizing that everything I'd been taught from the gurus about how you create success in your life, all that did for me was create a whole lot of stress, a whole lot of problems. I got a lot of good stuff in my life, but it came at a cost. And then I lost everything, became homeless. And when I rebuilt my life and things went in a completely different way, the work wasn't the problems and stress that I'd had before. And I went on a mission.
So, let's start from the beginning. What did you do prior to this life-changing revolution that you were a millionaire and all of that stuff?
Well, I was your typical entrepreneur. I'd had a number of different businesses. I've had 18 different businesses actually.
Wow.
At last count. And I was a typical driven person. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have freedom. And I got all of those things. But as I say, it came at a cost. And ultimately, I paid the price of losing it all.
And then you ended up becoming homeless after you lost everything.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it came down to one fateful day. I was just putting the finishing touches on my dream home that I just built. And in it, I had a music room. I'd been a musician earlier in my student days, and I always had this dream of having a music room. So I walked into this music room on this particular day, and the house was almost finished. And I sat down and I said to myself, I've done it. Here I am. I'm living the dream. I've got the house I always wanted. I've got two businesses. I've got freedom. I've got money. But instead of feeling satisfied and happy, I can remember this so clearly, I felt absolutely it was one of the worst days of my life. I was so stressed. I was shaking. I was almost in tears because I had lots of problems. Things weren't all going well in my life. I had relationship problems, and it felt like my life, whatever I was doing, whatever success I'd managed to achieve, it was like there was another side to it all, a side that was just problems and stress and exhaustion, and I'd bought into this idea that I'd been told as I went along the journey, well, problems are natural. Problems are inevitable. Problems are good for you. That's how you learn. That's how you grow, and life is about, success is about overcoming problems, overcoming your challenges, meeting them with determination and strength, and they make you stronger. And of course, if you look around anywhere, that's what we say about other people. We admire the people who've overcome all the adversity and all of the challenge, and we say that's how they got their success. So that's all fine, but it didn't really help me feel any better, because I was thinking, is this really what it's about? Because sure, I've got the success, but this wall of problems, it just seems like it never ends. I'm never at the stage where I can feel, yes, I'm really satisfied, I'm happy with my life. When I get things going well for a while, then something goes wrong. And it's just this constant empty feeling, and I've met so many people like that who are just showing up to life, dealing with problems and thinking, well, I'm going down this track. Where does it end? But anyway, in this particular, I was thinking all these thoughts, and then I thought, I'm just so tired of this. I'm so tired of pushing and trying to find this peace and feeling and fulfillment in my life, and some sort of sense of control, rather than being pushed in all these different directions. And I said to myself, or a voice said, maybe it'd be better if I lost everything, if it meant I could keep my soul, if I didn't lose my soul. Now, literally within a few weeks, that's what happened. I did lose everything. The businesses that I had, the home, money, it all went, and I had to move back in with my elderly mother and sleep on the sofa in the living room of her small apartment. So yes, it was a massive change going to homeless from a millionaire. But I learned something from that experience, because what happened after that was my life went in a completely different direction. And instead of me chasing after success, and I know this sounds weird and woo-woo, but it's There's actually a scientific explanation for how this happens, and it's nothing to do with law of attraction or neuroscience or anything like that. Neuroplasticity. It's not a buzzword. But what actually happened after that was things started to show up on my life that were really good. So I found a new business. Now I had no money, but after a few months, I had a new business that I was running again. I found a new relationship. And then I started to all of these really weird but wonderful things, like travel around my home country, New Zealand, in a new RV motorhome while managing. We had 3 businesses at that time, just managing them remotely. Then going off to Europe and buying a brand new yacht and sailing that around the world. I'm now in my 10th year of sailing nomadically around Europe on my catamaran in Italy as we speak, actually, which is actually my 4th boat in 10 years. And I kept thinking, how is all this happening? Because there were 2 weird things. One was, it all felt like it was just happening because I wasn't chasing after it. None of these things were on my goals list. Mind you, losing everything wasn't on my goals list either. But this wasn't on my goals list. All of the things that I was doing, they were far better, far more enjoyable, far more fulfilling and happy than I could ever have thought of my own to be doing. And they weren't stressful. It wasn't stressful. My businesses were working well. My relationship was amazing. My lifestyle was great. Just sailing around on a yacht, or if we felt like going away off the yacht for a month or a week or whatever we wanted to do, we had the freedom to do that. But everything was going really well. But none of it was on a goals list. And not only that, none of it was the result of me trying to get it, trying to go out and find an opportunity and, get more information, learn more, figure out how to do it. None of that was what was happening. It was like things were just showing up. Now, I was putting in effort obviously I took the opportunities when they came along, but it wasn't hard work in the sense it wasn't a struggle, and it didn't leave me feeling empty. It left me feeling with, hey, this is what I've been looking for, this fulfilling life. So that's when I decided I want to figure out what I'm doing differently. And it's nothing to do with all of that goal setting stuff that I'd learned before, because that didn't work for me. There wasn't anything to do with rewiring the subconscious mind or having affirmations or, carrying pieces of paper or listening to subliminal recordings or meditating or practicing some fancy schedule of peak performance. I'd done all of that stuff for years. I'd been to workshops, seminars all over the world, read all the books, done all these courses, and I really worked at all those things. But this was nothing like that. I wasn't doing any of this stuff, and yet life was working. So I wanted to figure out what was different, and that's really what I stumbled upon was my own case study, if you like. I was the proof, and I wanted to know exactly what I was doing because I didn't want to stop doing it, obviously. I wanted to make sure that it kept going the way it was going. And I found that there is actually a system, or if you like, a way this all works scientifically. And that's, of course, now what I help other people to understand.
So, what were the businesses that you had that ended up failing? What type of businesses?
Well, I had all sorts of businesses. I had a wine business. I had a horse trekking business. We take people on horse rides, big horse rides. I had retail businesses, a whole variety of things. But it was not the businesses per se that failed. It was me and decisions I made. And it was interesting. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and he was explaining to me that he'd lost $8 million through 3 decisions. It's often we do this, don't we? We make a bad decision and it has a huge impact on our life, and could be marrying the wrong person or saying something the wrong way to people, and all of these things have an impact. And if we do the wrong thing or we say the wrong thing, we get a bad result. So what we need to figure out is, how do we stop doing the wrong things? Is it just a question of knowing more? But I knew everything. I thought I did. There was something else going on. So, whatever business you have, you obviously, as you know, you're the key to its success, and I was the key to its failure in the end.
You hear that so much, especially nowadays with social media. You have all of these guys that will say, you got to grind. I mean, I even say it, you got to grind, you got to work hard, you got to put the reps in. Your entrepreneurship is not a linear upward momentum. It's a lot of peaks and valleys. But your narrative kind of counteracts what the traditional speak is around entrepreneurship. So what have you done differently now that you've kind of pivoted in your life that makes you not have to do this entrepreneurship struggle?
Well, I guess what it comes down to is understanding how we actually work. And a little clue, I used to think that it was all about grind and struggle and determination and seeing things through and, forcing things to happen. But the problem with that approach, A, it leaves you exhausted, obviously. B, you don't usually, certainly not often, get what you really want. You just get a lot of stress in your life. You keep thinking, oh, one day it's all going to pay off. But for most people, that day never comes. We're all on this treadmill and we're all thinking we're working towards something, but the journey isn't really a lot of fun a lot of the time. We think we need to sacrifice ourselves to get to where we think we want to go. And that's a clue, think where we want to go. But if you really think about how life works, and people listening or watching really think the answer to this question, where did the most significant things that happened to you in your life, where did they come from? So in particular, if you're married or in a relationship, where did that person come from? Now, were they on a goals list? Did you manifest them? Did you have it all mapped out that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'm going to meet a person with all of this description and we're going to get married and we're going to do all these things and we're going to have this number of children and these are what all their names are? It's not how life works. That person just showed up in your life unexpectedly and you looked at them and you thought, they're the one. And then the relationship took on a life of its own, didn't it? You didn't think every week, what are we going to do this week in our relationship? It all just unfolded and you got to know this person and you thought, wow, this is great. And it's the same in business. It's the same in other areas of our life. When you really think about it, how did I end up being in the place that I am right now? I've talked to a lot of very successful millionaire type business people and I asked them the question, how did you get real success? So we're not talking to people who want to be successful and who think that the way to get there is to follow some system. These are people who are really successful and they're not people who've done seminars with all the gurus either. They're people who, and usually, almost always, if not always, what they say to me is, when I say, how did you get here? How did you become so successful? They all say, I don't really know. To be honest, if I'm really honest, I don't know. It's like, well, this opportunity came along and that happened. And then I did this and then something else happened. I can't really put my finger on it as to say anything other than I just did it. And that's a clue. That's the way life is supposed to work. And there's a biological foundation for all of this, which I'm sure we'll come to, because I've proven that this works scientifically. This is how life works. Life does not work on struggle. And we're busy trying to mold life into something. But there's another plan for our life. And I'm not talking about a spiritual plan. I'm talking about a biological plan, how we're wired, how we're designed to operate. And there are laws of success, without sounding like, Napoleon Hill and all that old-fashioned stuff. There's actually the way nature works is based on success. So we need to understand that, because if we don't understand that, it's as silly as standing on top of a 10-story building and saying, I'm going to rewire my subconscious mind. I'm going to reprogram my beliefs. I'm going to write it out as a goal. I'm going to be determined. I'm going to pray and I'm going to meditate. And I'm going to jump off this building and fly into the air. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Because no matter what you do, there is a law of nature that overrides you. And that's the law of gravity. So we need to understand what the laws around, there's a thing what I call the law of thriving. And the law of thriving is something that pervades through all of nature, every single living thing, including us. And that law says that every living thing, whether it's an organism, a species, an individual, or even an ecosystem, that system is designed to thrive, to be the best that it can be, so that it has the greatest chance for survival. And that's how nature is wired. Nature is designed around thriving, being its best. Nature doesn't struggle. Nature has spent millions of years perfecting the art of getting the maximum result with the minimum amount of energy. Sometimes we call it least resistance. You see least resistance everywhere. You don't see, water running down a stream and then stopping at the rock and trying to get past it. It just goes around it. So nature has developed all these systems for energy efficiency, because energy efficiency also means that it gives something the greatest chance for survival. If you think about it, if you couldn't eat for a week, and many years ago we didn't eat for a week, if you couldn't eat for a week, you'd have to develop some system within you to make sure that you survived for a week. And not only you survived, but you had strong enough to catch the food when it showed up in a week. So your whole system is all based on minimum amount of energy for the maximum result. Conserve energy, so that we can use it to help us survive and move on, which is the purpose of all life. So everything's based around least resistance, least energy, least wastage of energy. So what are we doing struggling? Why are we fighting it? Why are we putting in so much effort and energy and not actually getting much in the way of results, but just telling ourselves, well, this is the way to do it? It doesn't make any biological or, practical sense to be that way. And that's what I discovered when I got into the state of not doing nothing, but not fighting. When I lost everything, I said to myself, I ultimately came to the conclusion I tried to figure out what had happened, why it had happened, and what I had to do next. And I couldn't think of anything. And I'd spent all my days, I'd done so many goal-setting workshops and how to get clear on what you want. And I did all these exercises and learned all the stuff I'd learned. I used all that, but I still couldn't find the answers to why it had happened to me and what to do next. So I came to the conclusion that I didn't know. I didn't know the answers to those questions. What I didn't realize is when I accepted I didn't know, that's when the struggle stopped. And what it did biologically is it brought this other part of my brain into gear, into action, what I call the thriving brain. There's a part of your brain, I'm not talking about anything like subconscious or something spiritual or psychological. There's a physical component in your brain that just like you have a physical component that's there to make you feel emotions. So you feel emotion by chemicals, hormones or neurotransmitters being produced that make you feel happy or feel sad. We all know that. That's a biological, mechanical process that creates your feelings. There's also a mechanical process in a different part of your brain that makes sure that you do the right things, you see the right things, you don't keep doing the wrong things, you see opportunities, you get new ideas. This is the thriving brain. This is the part that's supposed to be in control. And this is the part that doesn't operate through struggle and trying to figure stuff out. I mean, how many times have we ever had that experience, or we know of people who have, where you're working on a problem and, you can't figure out, you have to make a decision or you have to do something, you can't figure out what to do. And you spend weeks on it and you get a coach to help you and you go on YouTube and you look up videos or look up podcasts and you're playing around, you just can't make a decision or decide what to do. And then you're doing something else and suddenly you get this idea and you go, that's the answer. Why didn't I think of that before? Exactly. Why didn't you think of it before? Where did that idea come from? It didn't come from all your effort in trying to figure it out. It came from somewhere else. A different part of your brain produced this. It's the same with all creativity. You ask any composer or songwriter, where'd the idea for that song come from? You know what they all say? They say, I don't know, it just sort of came to me. One moment the idea wasn't there and then it was. And we've all had experiences like this, even if we're not musicians or we don't feel we're that creative. And we've also had those moments where there's a little voice inside us which says, look, you shouldn't really do that. That's not a good idea, but we do it anyway. Or it also says, you need to do that. But we say, no, I don't need to do that. It's too scary or I don't know how to do it, so I won't do that. And it's always wrong. The voice is right, and we're wrong if we don't follow it. So where does that come from? That doesn't come from all our efforts and thinking and goal setting either. It comes from somewhere else. This is the scientific biological part of your brain called the thriving brain. And that's what you need to start operating from. That's the part you not only need to start accessing, but living from, because that's the way we're designed to be. And if I could just say, I know I'm going on a bit here, but there's something really interesting about all of this. Humans we're a biological species, obviously, and we have biological processes. We eat, breathe, digest, and we have a biological process for thriving to ensure that we abide by the law of thriving, that we become our best so that we have the greatest chance for survival, along with every other species on the planet. But something really interesting about this is when I started to research this, what I found is that humans, we've been around for about 300,000 years, Homo sapiens, the human species. And for 97% of that time, we did actually live from our thriving brain, from the thriving part of our brain. And for 97% of the time in history, there were no wars. There was very little evidence of any conflict between humans. People were taller, 5 inches taller than they are now. Most of the diseases we call commonplace didn't exist. The lifespan was longer than it is today. The people's bones were stronger, healthier, and they were a lot happier. It was only something that happened in the last 10 to 12,000 years that sent humanity completely not only off track, but out of sync with the whole of the rest of nature. And we stopped using the thriving brain. We deactivated it largely. We sometimes have these experiences where it is working, but it's not our predominant state. And we went into this other state, which I call our survival state. And that's the state based on stress, worry, frustration, fear. That is the key. We started to operate from fear instead of trust, thriving, allowing, and knowing how we're supposed to operate to thrive. So most of the time we've been living like this. We've just gone way off track. And now, of course, we think, well, this is normal. Everybody's like this. You said to me, everybody's got problems. So it must be normal. If everyone's doing something, it must be right. But that's not actually scientifically a fact. So this is what I'm basically spending my time telling people about.
So how does one get into the quote unquote thriving brain if they're so used to survival and trying to make payroll or make sure all the bills are paid and whatnot? How does one get into the more thriving or creative brain to become more, as you would say, successful, I guess?
Well, that's actually the topic of my forthcoming book that I've got coming out called The Thrive Switch, because there's actually a biological switch in your brain that you can switch from the state of fighting against yourself and fighting against life to allowing life to bring you everything that you're supposed to have for you to thrive. That's why I call it the Thrive Switch. But essentially it comes down to understanding how, in the big picture, how your life works. And what activates the Thrive Switch, or what deactivates it, is a biological process called fear. So essentially, when you feel afraid, you activate your survival brain, and the purpose of that, there's only one purpose for you to feel afraid, and that is if you are faced with an immediate threat or danger. You're not supposed to feel afraid of something that hasn't happened yet, or may never happen, or something in the future, or that's imaginary, or a regret of the past. You have a biological process in your brain that says your natural state is to thrive, just like the rest of nature. But if something comes out to hurt you or harm you, then you have the switch that can activate fear, and we call it the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, if you like, get you to react to that fear or danger and deal with it there and then, just like you do. We know that if somebody came running at you, you'd jump out of the way, or if someone's about to hit you, you'd shout for help. Or if a lion's about to eat you, you'd stand and fight or run away or whatever, this is what it was designed for. So when we realize that is the only purpose of fear, but the way we use our brains, we create a life full of fear. We're not just afraid of what's happening right now. We're afraid of what we think might happen in the future. We're afraid of the regrets that we have in the past. But this fear of the future, what is it based on? It's based on stories we're telling ourselves. If I don't do this, if I don't earn this money, if I don't keep this business, if I don't reach this goal, something bad is going to happen to me. I'm going to feel regret. I'm going to feel like I'm a failure. I'm not going to be able to do all the things I really want to do in my life. I'm not going to have the freedom to travel, and I'm not going to have the peace of mind, in other words, to to be a success. So we create all of these stories in our mind of imaginary negative scenarios, if you like. They're not based on the present moment. They're based on what we think might happen in the future. And the problem was the brain was never designed to deal with that. The brain was never designed biologically to solve every imaginary problem in your life. It's only there to solve a problem right now, and a real problem. And somebody telling you, I'm going to take your business away from you, you're going to lose everything. That's not a real problem. Actually, when you think about it, that happened to me, and it's the best thing that ever happened. But what makes it a problem is you think about what might happen as a result of that. So your brain is the most incredible computer, and it's doing all this stuff without you even realizing it, saying things like someone taking your business, or another classic example, someone telling you they don't want to be married to you anymore. And I do a lot of marriage and relationship coaching, and mainly with people who's been told by their husband or wife that they want a divorce, and they don't want that to happen. And they go into a complete tailspin over the situation of their husband or wife telling them they want a divorce. But your husband or your wife telling you they want a divorce, or you're losing your business, they are not problems. They are not threats to your survival. What is what your brain is telling you might happen as a result of that. So your brain says your husband or wife saying they want a divorce means you'll never find anybody else. You'll be lonely for the rest of your life. You'll be sitting under a little bridge, drinking out of a wine bottle, regretting the past and saying, I'm such a failure and I could have done so much to save that marriage. And no one, I could never, I've never found anybody who could remotely approach the quality of my husband or my wife. And all of my friends have disowned me. So we created all these imaginary stories, and the brain is saying, I can't deal with that. For 300,000 years, I've been designed to deal with a real problem, because the way you're supposed to live your life is enjoy it. Have all the good things happen. Do the things that are going to make you live longer, more successful, more creative, feel better. That's all going to extend your life. You're not supposed to be worrying about imaginary problems. So the brain never did that for 288,000 years, 290,000 years. But then we made a switch and we started to create all these stories about the future and say, all of these bad things might happen. And the survival brain, because what happens is when you're locked in that survival state, you're either in survival state or you're in thrive state. You can't be in both at the same time. So when you're locked in by fear and stress and anxiety and worry and frustration and anger, your survival brain is looking to solve all of the problems in your life, because you're telling it you've got problems. You've got threats and dangers that need to be got rid of. There's a lion right there and you need to get rid of it. But if you're telling it all these stories, it is completely overloaded and it's stuck, because it can never solve all your imaginary problems. You're always going to it's always going to keep coming up with more imaginary problems. And this is one of the reasons people say, well, yeah, I've got enough money now, but I might not in the future. So even though I'm a millionaire, I need to be a billionaire. And then even though I'm a billionaire, I need to have 20 billion more, but I need to have more. We have this mentality of we have to have more. We see some virtue in getting more. And it's all because we're afraid, or this part of the brain is saying, there's another problem you don't have enough. Now you have enough now, but in the future, you don't have enough in this particular imaginary scene that I've created. And because this part of your brain doesn't see the future or the past, it sees it all as the present. It has no sense of time. It's going, oh, you've just got so many problems in your life that you have to deal with. And I'm just going to keep you in this state of fear, stress, worry, anxiety. And we're just going to spend all our time trying to fix all of these problems. Meanwhile, your thriving brain, which is actually, ironically, where all the answers to your problems are, your thriving brain is the one that knows exactly what you should go for in your life. It knows what's going to make you really happy. It knows what you're good at and what you're not good at. It knows what inspires you. It knows what you should do. And it knows how to solve your problems. Because I mentioned at the beginning, it's not natural to have problems. It's not. Your thriving brain is to make sure that you don't have problems. Problems don't help you survive. They don't help you extend your life. All they do is shorten your life. So your thriving brain is always, when you operate it, always make sure that you don't have problems. And I know that's a tall order to believe, but it is actually true. It doesn't mean you don't have challenges. But everything that's there is designed to guide you along this thriving path. And it's, to save you from disasters and make sure you live this happy, excited life, if you like. So that's what it's there for. And when it sees a problem, a potential problem, it's going to make sure that you avoid that problem. I mean, how many times I used to be like this so much, where I'd do something out of stress or desperation. I remember when I used to employ staff, and often I'd employ the wrong person for the job, and I'd think subconsciously, a voice said, they're not the right person for the job. You shouldn't be employing them. But I did employ them anyway. Why? Because I didn't think I could find anyone else. I was desperate at the time, and I thought, well, they'll do, and I'll make them work. I'll train them up, and they'll be fine in the job. All of which was a disaster. It just gave me all these problems. Whereas if I'd listened to the voice, or that little voice in my head which said, look, they're the wrong person. And if I also knew that my thriving brain, if I just didn't make the wrong decision, it would bring the right person along, because that happened to me as well. I couldn't find the right person. I'd be going, oh no, I've got to fill this position. What am I going to do? And then a couple of days later, I'd get something in an email, or somebody would walk in. They'd be the right person for the job. Now, why didn't I trust at the time that right person would show up? Because I didn't understand that I had this part of my brain that was going to make sure the right person showed up. That's what it's there for. It's biologically designed to make sure you make the right decisions. But if you block it by making wrong decisions all the time out of fear, then, these impetuous decisions we often make, then it's just, you're going to be shut down, and you're going to make its job so much more difficult. So we're not supposed to have a problem-filled life. We're supposed to have an enjoyable life where we thrive like every other species on the planet, where we just be the best that we can be. Problems are something that we've really created because we're using our brain the way it was never designed to be used.
A lot of a lot of guys that kind of practice or preach rather what you coach people on. For example, Tony Robbins, he's big on gratitude, right? You start the day with gratitude. You find things that you're grateful about, because that kind of flips a switch in your head. Because if you're grateful, you can't be negative. And you kind of allow some of this abundance into your life because you're grateful. Is that kind of the same
Yeah.
pattern that you're trying to help people teach?
Well, yes and no.
Or learn, rather?
Yes and no, because here's the problem with practicing gratitude, is that what you're really doing is you're trying to feel grateful. I often say to people, just try this thing where first thing in the morning, think of 10 things in your life you're really grateful for. But what invariably happens, and if people have tried that, good, but really think about what you're doing when you're doing that. Isn't it true that you're trying to feel grateful, but you never really feel grateful? You go, and there's a little voice in your brain that's going, you should be grateful for that, but there's something about you just can't feel that, because you've got all these other problems and stresses and things going on in your life. You want to feel gratitude, and you think you should feel gratitude, but something just won't push that switch over the edge. And this is because, again, we're using a different part of our brain. We're trying to force gratitude. It's like faith and letting go. All of these things, we try to force them. We say, yes, okay. And people I've coached, they say, okay, Liam, you're just telling me to let go. Just let go and everything will work out fine, and that's great. Okay, I'll just let go. But people never do. People never really let go. They don't get to that place where they're absolutely moving forward with trust and letting go. There's always a part of their voice which is going, well, hang on, what happens if the wrong thing happens? Yeah, I'll let go, but I want to make sure that it goes down that by doing that, the right thing's going to happen. So if we use the wrong part of our brain, we can't, even though it sounds good, yes, you should feel gratitude, and gratitude is one of those things that is an expression of the fact that you're using your thriving brain, this part of your brain. But it's real gratitude. It's not, and you can't manufacture it. You can't force it. It's the other thing like that is motivation. Now, have you ever had that experience where you just feel so inspired to do something and you're not thinking about whether it's too hard or too difficult or what you need to do. You're just really loving what you're doing. Might be writing something. Creative people, again, talk about this and say, they just got into the state. We call it the flow state. It's the thrive state, actually, where things just flow out of you. You get these ideas and you're being super productive, and you write a book in a day, or you give a talk to somebody and it just goes really well. Now, whenever you have that experience, it's not a lot of hard work. It's not a lot of effort. It's effort on one level, but it's not struggle. It's like this energy is flowing through you with the least amount of resistance. And you feel wonderful about it. You feel energized. You're doing something. Everything's all clicking into place. That is what your thriving brain does. But again, you can't force it. You can't stand up before a speech and go, I'm going to be really good in this speech. And you can't tell yourself all of this stuff, because what your brain is saying is, you don't believe it. You're just hoping that's what will happen. So you're sitting there reciting all the things that you should be grateful for. You don't have the feeling of gratitude. You might know intellectually that you're grateful for those things, but you don't feel it. And that's why it doesn't work. That's why belief in setting a goal doesn't work, because you don't believe it's really going to happen. Very occasionally, we do have a goal where we just know for whatever reason we're going to achieve it, and we do. But we do with effort, but without struggle. And that's happened to me. I remember once walking into a house when I was looking to buy a home, and I just walked into this house and I said, this is it. I'm going to buy this house. And it was 3 times my budget. I didn't have the money, but somehow I just knew, and it wasn't through determination or anything else, but somehow I bought the house. I still don't know where all the money came from. We get those occasionally, and that is our thriving brain working. But most of the time we're trying to force things to happen, and we're trying to tell ourselves, if I have some ritual, if I tell myself enough that I'm grateful or that I'm going to do this or whatever, that it's going to work. I tried all that stuff for years. It didn't work for me. And I know many, I used to go to all the seminars, and I'd look around and I think some of the seminars from some of the people you mentioned, I used to do through theirs, and they were like multi-year seminars. And so I'd meet the same people a few months later at the next one. And I'd think, is their life any different than it was 6 months ago? Is my life any different than it was 6 months ago?
Yeah.
What are we all doing here? It sounds like it should work.
Yeah.
And we all think, well, everyone else is saying it's working. Oh, look at me. I've achieved all my goals. And people don't usually say that. They usually say I'm working towards my goals and I feel good about it. You might as well go along to church on a Sunday morning and have someone tell you God will save you. It's the same feeling, isn't it? It's more, hope and relief that actually you might be on the right track. But the biggest problem I found is none of that stuff really helped me. And I haven't seen much evidence of helping most people. It might help a tiny proportion of people, and usually it helps them in ways that are different to what they think anyway. But it didn't really help me. And I spent years really focusing on doing all of this stuff. And I realized it's because it's like trying to imagine driving a motor car, and you didn't know what a motor car was, but someone said, that thing over there is a motor car. And you say, what does that do? Oh, it's great. It's a machine that gets you from where you are to anywhere you want to go. And it's great fun. And even if you don't know particularly where you want to go and you change your mind, you can go somewhere else with it. It's totally flexible, whatever you want to do. And then they wander off and you look at it and think, I wonder how that works. I'll give it a try. So you think, well, it's got wheels. So what you do is you think, well, I'll stand behind it and I'll push it along. And you get behind the car and you put in all of this enormous effort into pushing the car. And what happens? Nothing. You're not getting anywhere. It just wears you out. But you say to yourself, I'm the problem. I'm not determined enough. I don't have enough motivation. Maybe I'm not strong enough. My muscles, my legs and my arms are not strong enough to push this car and to get it working, to this machine working. So I need to do a course on build it. Every morning I need to get up and strengthen my muscles. And someone comes along and says, no, it's your shoes that are wrong. You need the different sort of shoes that have more traction. That'll help you do the job more. Because you look around and everyone else is trying to push a car along as well. And they're not getting anywhere. They're just getting exhausted. And they're all saying, oh, I'm going to make progress one day. I'm on the right track. I'll achieve my goal. And some people are praying and other people are meditating and other people are visualizing. And they're all doing all this stuff, but nobody's getting anywhere. And then someone comes along and says, why are you making it so difficult? That's not the way the machine's designed to be used. The machine was invented for it to be easy for you to get to where you were. Not, I mean, if you want to get somewhere the hard
Mm-hmm.
way, walk. You know, this was designed to make it easier for you. It's natural. Here, I'll show you. And you hop it, they put you in the car and they say, press this button, press that lever, and off you go and enjoy the ride. That's the thing about the brain. Because we don't understand how our brain works, we think that just by pushing and doing what everybody else is saying you should do is going to get us anywhere. But let's face it, it's not getting us anywhere, is it? We've got record levels of dissatisfaction, unhappiness, and even amongst people who achieve a lot, there's so little real fulfillment in life anymore. And it was never designed for 97% of our history. That's not the way it was. It's only for the last little while that we've gone off track.
Yeah, it's I mean, by your standards, like one of my dreams is I would love to go and live in Italy for like 6 months while my businesses stayed back here and ran. I just cannot wrap my head around leaving my businesses for that long because I'd be in constant worry of things going wrong or things not getting done right or whatever. It's really hard for myself to even wrap my head around that mentality.
Well, and what's the basic problem? You know what's happening? You're living in a way that is unnatural biologically. And if I could just explain why this is.
Mm-hmm.
Remember I mentioned the law of thriving. Every living thing is designed to achieve its best state. Science calls this homeostasis. They even have a word for that. So it gives itself the greatest chance for survival. Now, if I can relate it to when I was on my mother's sofa, okay? Now, if I'd figured out in that state, say I sat down, I did so many goal-setting workshops, how to get clear on what you want, what your dreams are, what your goals are, what your values are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, your strengths and weaknesses, what suits you, all of that sort of stuff. Now, imagine if my brain had said to me, Liam, your ultimate goal, what is going to make you thrive, make you your best, is in your DNA of the ultimate of who you are, is you're going to become a nomad. I've been a nomad for 15 years now. You're going to become a nomad and you're just going to travel around the world with an amazing partner, and the two of you are going to set up businesses. You're going to sail all over the world in your own yachts, and you're going to be doing some incredible trips. And at the same time, you're going to develop a whole new philosophy that really people haven't joined the dots with before about, which is everyone's designed to thrive. And you're going to be teaching people about how the brain works and how we're biologically designed to thrive and not struggle. And you're going to be teaching, you're going to be meeting great people and great podcasts, and you're going to be teaching all of this stuff that people haven't heard about before, and you're going to be having a great time. Now, if I'd read that, I would have thought, what would I have thought? That's utterly ridiculous for two reasons. The first reason is just what you were saying. I don't know how I'm going to do it. That's the first reason. And the second reason is I didn't even know that that's what I wanted. I would have said, how do I know that's what I want? So what I would have done in that situation, if I knew what I really wanted, this is what I'm getting at, and it relates a little bit to your idea. If that is what I really want, if I knew that, then the problem is or if I thought I knew, what do? I do one of two things. So I do several things, but the main thing I do is if it's out of my orbit of what I've ever thought of, and all of the things I'm describing about my life, even what I'm doing now, I hadn't even thought of a year ago. We were talking about the yacht we're in. It wasn't even an idea in our heads a year ago. So if I was presented with this is what you're supposed to be doing, what you're really going to enjoy, even though you don't know it, what would I do? I'd look at that list, what it was, and I'd start to analyze it. Do what you're doing. I'd say, I don't know how to do it. I need to figure out how to do it. I'm not sure, if I do it, it's going to work, or, all those things. What are you doing? You're wasting biological energy. Remember, nature's built on biological efficiency, the least amount of energy for the maximum outcome. So you're wasting all that energy. You're not doing anything towards getting to that place. So then you say, okay, fair enough, Liam. So maybe my brain is not designed to show me my ultimate goal, because if it did, then it would be so amazing, could be so amazing, and certainly probably way outside my experience level. I'd be doubting, I'd be questioning, I'd be analyzing, I'd be trying to figure out what to do to achieve it. So that's biologically inefficient. So then imagine if your brain said, well, you don't need to know the next, how to get there. You don't need to know the whole plan, but I'll just give you the next 10 steps on how to get there. So then you come up with your brain comes up with a list of 10 steps. Then what do? You look at the list and you go, well, step number 3, I don't know how to do that. Is that really the right step that I should take to get to step number 4? What happens if I don't get to step number 4? What happens if step number 6 comes before step number? It doesn't look right to me. So I need to go and do some more analysis and thought and figure it out and ask other people and get some more information and do all of this stuff. What am I doing? I'm just wasting all this energy, all this biological energy. So that doesn't make any sense for your brain to show you. Your brain is designed, and it did this for, again, it's another pattern for 97% of our history. It didn't show you what you're supposed to do to thrive. It showed you the next step. That's all you need to know, because that is the most biologically efficient way of making sure you get to where you're supposed to go. So it says, and we do this instinctively, by the way. When you activate the Thrive switch from my book, you do this instinctively. You don't sit there and think, well, what should I do next to reach my goal? You just find yourself instinctively doing the right thing. You say the right thing, you contact the right person or something, you act on the right thing. It just all happens instinctively because our brain is built to work on instinct, not on overthinking and stress. So that's the most biologically efficient way to do it, way for your brain to make sure you to get to where you're supposed to be, not where you think you're supposed to be. Because remember what happens when we set goals is we sit down and we try and figure it all out from a logical perspective. And we think, what would make me happy? Now, what would make me happy is a question that your survival brain always asks, because your survival brain is going, I'm so stressed. How do I get out of this? What more do I need? How can I have a good life? How can I solve all my problems? How can I be rich? And how can I be happy? And how can I be doing all these exciting things that are going to make me feel really good? So it's trying to figure all that stuff out, but it doesn't know the answers to those things. It's not it's not the part of the brain that's there to figure it out. Your thriving brain is, but it only shows it to you one step at a time. And it's the same with people I've talked to. I mentioned wealthy people. All sorts of people who are happy go, well, I just took it one step at a time and I got rid of expectation, got rid of trying to figure it out and understood that there's a part of my brain that knows exactly what I need for me to thrive, but it's not from my thinking. That's why we get these new ideas, new inspiration, and new opportunities and things that happen in our life. It doesn't come. The thinking part of your brain is another part of the brain. I have a 4-part brain model. You might have gathered we'll come to 3 of them. And that is the 4. And they each have a separate function. Your thinking brain is not there to try and figure out what you should do with your life to thrive. That's your thriving brain, not your thinking brain. So that's really, if you don't mind me giving a little bit of an observation about maybe your goal to live in Italy for 6 months of the year, maybe it is or it isn't, but you don't really know. You can't know. Only your thriving brain knows. And if you just say, look, I'm just going to take the next step. Now, the key is to get rid of fear, because if you say I'm going to take the next step and you're afraid, doesn't mean you don't feel a bit uncomfortable about doing something. But if you do something out of fear, like you shout at somebody, we do that, don't we? We react. We get into a situation, we react and we say, oh, I should never have said that, or I should never have done that. We do it out of anger, fear, all of those things that are our survival brain in control, not our thriving brain. So, but when we activate the Thrive switch, we live in the only place that exists and the only place the brain knows how to deal with, the only thing that is real, that is right now. There is no future. There is no past. Every scientist will tell us this. There is only right now. And the brain is designed to manage perfectly right now. It doesn't, and all the goal setting and everything else. I mean, I just find life is so much more rewarding when you just see what shows up and you just act on what is showing up and you go, I'm in this thriving state and whatever shows up today, it's going to be right for me. It's going to be amazing. Now, when you're spent most of your life living in survival state with stress, fear, worry, and anxiety, of course, you're going to have a lot of problems that you need to unravel and get rid of. But once you use the switch and you start
Mm-hmm.
using your thriving brain, you start doing the right things. You start making the right decisions. And sometimes it's walking away from a business, walking away from a job. If you're in a job you didn't like, or if you had a business that wasn't doing well, why wouldn't you just walk away from it? If you knew that a better one was coming along, if you knew there was a part of your brain that's designed biologically to make sure that everything that happens in your life is for the best so that you thrive without stress and problems, you're not going to think, I need to hang on to that business and try and fix it. I used to have businesses, I said I had 18. Some of them weren't very successful. And the ones that weren't successful, when I tried to force them to be successful, I go, I'm going to make this work. And all of the evidence was it was a lousy business. It just, it was the wrong market or the wrong location or whatever it was, had the wrong people. And I would have been far better off if I just walked away from it. And if I'd known that something much better was coming along, I would have walked away from it. Same with the relationship. People are in a toxic relationship. I've helped people, or tried to help people, who've been in a marriage for 30 years, and for 29 and a half of them, they were miserable. They hated each other. And what kept them there was fear. Oh, I can't leave. I'll be a failure. I'll never find anyone as good. We can make this work. We can solve this. And everyone knows relationships are difficult. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. You have to work on a relationship. All of that's nonsense. There are plenty of people out there, not plenty, but there are people out there who've got relationships, no problems, enjoyable relationships, and they're not, and they don't go to workshops and couples counseling and work on their relationship. It's just a good relationship. Nothing happens in nature by force. It's all by allowing the right things to happen. You don't need to force these things to happen. And when we understand this, that's when you actually do it. Before then, when we don't understand it, we're still in hope. We think by praying to God, God will give us what we want. But we don't know what we want. We know what we think we want, but we don't know that's what's really right for us because we haven't experienced it yet. But our thriving brain knows. I mean, for you, it might not be Italy. It might be, I'm glad to say Italy because it's my favorite country as well. And that's why I'm here at the moment. Spend so much time here. Magic place. But you don't really, wouldn't it be better, I think, and this is what I found. I'm so glad my thriving brain delivered to me what it did rather than what I thought it would do, what I wanted rather than what I thought I wanted. It's a completely different experience of life. And why does it say, religion says this, all through religion and spiritual traditions, they talk about this. They talk about faith, love, belief, trust, allowing. God will give you what you want. But God, what you want is to feel good. God won't give you what you think you want. So you're sitting there thinking, God, help me win the lottery or, make me rich. That's what you think you want. God is sitting there going, or this intelligence that works through your thriving brain is saying, I know what you want. I'll give it to you. What's the big deal? No problem. But stop telling me what you want because you don't know. You can't. A little bit different.
Liam, it's a fascinating subject, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Where can everybody learn more about you, reach out to you, maybe get your book, all that jazz?
Well, if they'd like to sign up for when the book is coming out, they could go to thethriveswitch.com. And if they'd like to find out more about how their brain works, they can just go to my name, which is liamnaden.com. And actually, I've got a quiz on there at the moment. You can take this 2-minute quiz, 7 questions, and that will tell you exactly which part of your brain you're predominantly using and how you can start to make this switch and live a enjoyable life.
Are you on social media too?
Yes, I'm all over Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, all those things. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Liam, for coming on.
Thank you, Bo.